Daf Nun Gimel Amud Beis, right at the top. Amar Ma v'loy b'kameya afal pi shehu mumcha. The animal cannot go out with a kameh, with an amulet, even if it was written by an expert. I frakti moravan antanan v'loy b'kameya she'ena mumcha. You cannot go out with a kameh if it's not from an expert. So medayik ha mumcha shabadami. Must be that if it was a mumcha, then it would be mutter. So it seems to be a stira from the Gemara. Hachanami she'ena mumcha. Now what we mean is that if it's not from an expert, like the Gemara, v'hafa pishu mumcha getani, it says even though it's a mumcha. More answers mumcha la'adam ve'ena mumcha la'behema. But we're talking about that it was written by someone who is established as being an expert for writing the amulets that heal people, but not animals. So therefore, it's not considered to be a mumcha for the animal. But if it would be a mumcha for the animal as well, then it would be mutter. So, well, once the person is established as being an expert, why should we say that it wouldn't be a mumcha of an expert for an animal as well? And that's the way the Ritva explains it. If we're talking about a person who is a mumcha for a person for different types of diseases, well then if he's a mumcha to write a kameya, an amulet for different types of diseases, why would we assume that it wouldn't work for a behemoth as well? So, the Gemara says in, yes, there's a difference between the two. Adam the isle mazla mesaile. A person has mazel. So he has a certain mazel, he has a certain siyata d'shmaya, so the mumcha could be established as a mumcha for an adam, that his kameya could work for an adam, because less is required because of the person's mazel. It requires less of an expertise to have a kameya for an adam. But perhaps it will not help for a behemoth. And therefore, what we're talking about over here is that even though the person has been established as a mumcha for an adam, but if he's not established as a mumcha to write kameyas for behemoth, the behemoth cannot go out with them. Well, why is this a chumrah behemoth over adam? In both cases, you need someone who has been established as a mumcha. They have just different mumchas. You have to be a mumcha for an adam or a mumcha for a behemoth. And as some Rishonim learn, that it goes both ways as well. That meaning, even if a person is a mumcha to write a kameya for behema, it does not establish him as a mumcha for an adam, because it's true that an adam has greater mazel, but a behema is stronger. So it really goes both ways, and in both cases, you need to have a mumcha for that particular person or the behema. So why is it a chumrah? Why do we consider it a chumrah? Then why is it a chumrah behema ba'adam? They're really the same. The more answers now. Misavar, the kameya, this is what we say, this is a chumrah behema ba'adam. It's not going on the case of kameya. And chanami, and as far as kameya goes, it's not really a difference. Misavar, the kameya goes, sandal kai. It's going as far as a shoe, that it's a chumrah on a behema. Behema cannot go out with a shoe. A person could. That's what it's referring to. So we had before the machlokes Rav and Shmuel, where we can do things and do tirchas to alleviate the tsar, the pain for a behemoth. So Tashmal asks you if a person has a sore, has a scab, you can rub it with oil and you can be mefarchas it, you can peel off the scabs, but not for a behemoth. So, my love, aren't we talking about here the ikamake, that there is a wound, the mishum tsar? So, aren't we talking that the purpose of it by an adam is to alleviate the tsar? And nevertheless, we're saying for a person, for an adam, it's mutter, but for behem, it's also. So it's a kasha on both Rav and Shmuel, because don't you see from here that to alleviate the tsar for the behema is also on Shabbos, it's considered tircha yasera, it's considered to be exerting oneself, and necessarily, excessively, and it's also the Gemara says like. No, that's not what we're talking about over here. We're not talking about that there is a makkah. It's the Gemara makkah. the sore has already been healed. It's just the crust of the scab that's there. And the purpose of this is mishum tanug. It's not to alleviate the tsar, it's just to give it tanug, to give it pleasure. So for there, it's for an Adam it's mutter, but for behema it's also. Now this stems according to Shmuel, but according to Rav, who says for behema tanug is also mutter l'cher it's kasha. So as the Rishonim say, Rav is tana upolik. Rav argues on this tana. Tashma behema shachsadam. If a behema had achsadam, it had high blood pressure, or if it had a rush of blood, so you have to now cool down the temperature of the animal. You do not cool it off in water. But a person, you put him in the water to cool him off. So don't you see over here that even though the purpose is over here is to alleviate the tsar, nevertheless for a behema it's also. So don't you see that tircha is also for the behema even b'mokaim where it's to alleviate the tsar? Amar Uli says no, that's not the isra over here. Amar gzer mishum shchika salmonim. Its isra is not tircha yusera. This goes into the category of medicine, and medicine doing something for medicinal purposes and for medicinal procedures is also on Shabbos. We're afraid if a person takes medicine on Shabbos, he'll come to make the medicine. He'll come to make the medicine, which involves shchika samamonim, grinding up the herbs, which is an isra deraisa of Taichen, so they're geyser by medicines on Shabbos. So therefore, the Isser over here, you cannot draw from here a rule that to alleviate tsar for behema is also mishum tircha yisera. That's not the Isser over here. It's because this is considered to be like doing a medical procedure, a medicinal purpose, and is also the gzeira shchika salmonim. But if something does not involve any medicine, perhaps I'll tell you that the tircha for an animal to alleviate the tsar is mutter. In fact, the Gemara, well, as you're telling me that it's it should be also for a person also. For a person, just like a person can't take medicine, this procedure, cooling him off in the cool water, should also be also. The Gemara answers, no, Adam near can make her. It's not also because over here it does not have the appearances of taking medicine or doing a medical procedure. Over here it looks like he's just cooling himself off in the water. So that's why for an autumn they're not geyser. In fact, the Gemara can make her. Well, why don't you say the same thing for the behema? It doesn't look like it's medicinal, and therefore it shouldn't be exer shchika salmonim. It only looks like he's cooling himself off. More answers ain't maker the behema. There's no making, you don't cool off an animal. You don't go to that extent to take an animal into a cool body of water to cool him off. A person you do, but you don't do that kind of effort. You don't go to that extent for a behema. So it's obvious that what he's doing over here is something that's medicinal, and therefore it's included in the gzeira. Are we geyser bechlal? Are we geyser by a behema? That are we geyser that it might involve a loss of money when there's a makam pseida? Are we geyser? Do we enforce these types of zeros? You're telling me that even though the behema there might be a loss, it might be a pseida, it might be a chesar kiss because the animal has exhausted dam, and nevertheless we make a gzeira. Are we geyser by behemas where there's a makam pseida or there's potential loss? Do we make zeros? Vatanya, we learned in the brayso, if the animal is outside the tchum, you can call it and it can have it come to you. Now, and we're not geyser that by doing this, if it doesn't come, you might go ahead and fetch it and bring it, and you might go out chutz l'tchum, and we're not geyser. So you see, b'makam seida, that we're not geyser. So you see that we don't impose these types of gzeros. Now, we shouldn't point out, the Gemara could have answered very simply, Ishchika Salmon is a gzera ought to, he might come to do in a deraisa. And over here, even if he does bring the animal chos l'tchum, according to most Tanoim, it's a Rabban, not the rice. So the Gemara could have answered simply, but nevertheless, the Gemara gives another teretz, V'omer Avina, Ki goin shloisa, Shalhaya Tchum Shalom, Muv L'Besoyach Tchum Shalom. We're talking in a particular case where the Tchumim overlap, meaning a person has his Tchum. He can go 2,000 amas from his Malkam Shvis, from the place that he established his house, his place of Shvisa, where he is on Erev Shabbos, on the onset of Shabbos. He has 2,000 amas in each direction from that place. We're talking in a case where the animal was given to, let's say, a shepherd. It was given to somebody else before Shabbos. So on the onset of Shabbos, the animal had the tchum of, let's say, the shepherd, which is not the same as the owner. But where the animal is now, it's outside the tchum of the shepherd, but it's within the tchum of the person. So therefore, we're not concerned about the person going outside and going to the animal because it's within his own tchum. But it's within his own tchum, so therefore we're not concerned in such a case. Now, the Rishonim point out, Rashi, Taisus, other Rishonim, that even though the person can call the animal, he's not mitzuva on the animal going outside of the tchum, of the shepherd's tchum, but he cannot bring it biyadayim. He cannot bring it, but he can only call it. He can't bring it to biyadayim. So one might say that, well, in any event, if we are a geyser, why aren't we concerned that if he calls it, and if he doesn't come, he might come to bring it? But perhaps that's a further step removed, and that to the extent that they wouldn't be geyser to that extent. But in the case of shchikos salmonim, there perhaps they would be geyser. Rav Nachman bar Yitzchak Omer shchikos salmonim gufa tanoi. Rav Nachman bar Yitzchak says whether or not they're geyser, this whole gzera of shchikos salmonim, by a person they're geyser, you can't take medicine because it might grind up the salmon. But he says by an animal, that in itself is a machlokes tanoim. Whether we have this gzera for an animal where we're geyser, it in itself is actually a machlokes tanoim. You're saying that the reason for the animal that it's also because of gzera shchikos salmonim, but he says that guf has a machlokes tanoim. The Tanya behema shachla krishin, a behema overate vetch, and now it has a stomach ailment. Lawyer it sent a b'chatzer b'shil shetus rapa. You can't have it run around in the chatzer, and by doing that, by running around, and have it now relieve the pain in its stomach and relieve itself. You can't do that. Rabbi Yoshe Mater, Rabbi Yoshe says it's mutter. So apparently the reason that it's also is because the shchikos salmonim, it looks like a refuah that you're trying to cure the ailment. But Rabbi Yoshe says it's mater, he's mater. So apparently he's not geyser shchikos salmonim by behema. Doris Rava halacha Rabbi Yoshe, and he says the halacha is like Rabbi Yoshe. Azov cannot go out with his pouch, and the goats cannot go out with the kiss, with the pouch covering their udders. We learned in the Brisa that they could go out with the kiss. Rav Yehuda says, Rav Yehuda says we're going according to the basic shita that it's not considered a masek. It's not considered caring. If it's tied tightly, so it's mutter because it's not considered a masek. Where it says that it's also is where it's not tied tightly, and therefore afraid it'll fall off and he'll come to carry it. Rav Yosef says, are you removing, erasing tanoim from the world? Meaning, it's a machlekes tanoim, and you can attribute each brisa to a different tana. Tanoi, it's a machlekes tanoim. It's non ha'izim. Yosef Srurois. It says that the izim, the goats, could go out Srurois. They could go out with the pouch that's tied to the udders. Rav Yosef Eiser Bekulan Chutz Min Rachelos HaKavunas. Rav Yossi answers all of them. He says it's also except the Rachelos, the Uvs that are Kivunos. We'll see in the Gemara on Nun Daled what that means and why it is so. Rabbi Yehuda Omer, Rabbi Yehuda says the Tan Rabbi Yehuda Omer is Yosef Suris LeYavesh, if it's tied and tied tightly, so to stop it from lactating, to stop it from producing milk, then it's mutter. Avaloi lecholev, but not to collect the milk. As Rashi explains, if it's sruas liyovesh, then it's tied tightly, number one. And number two is, since it's used to stop it from producing milk, which that in itself would make the animal weaker, so this is considered to be a shmira, a protection for the animal, so it's mutter. But not to collect the milk, which that is considered a masui. So what do we see over here? We see that the Tanakama says that Izmiyai says mutter, and Rav Yossi says it's also. So we see that it's a machlekes tanoim. V'vaysema ha'vahav Rav Yehuda. I can tell you that they're both Rav Yehuda. V'leikash kan leyavish kan lecholiv, and it makes a difference. It's leyavish lecholiv. So where it says it's mutter, it's leyavish. Where it says it's also, it's lecholiv. Tanya Rav Yehuda Maisa beizim based on tuchia. So we're talking about the goats. There was a Maisa that is based on tuchia the dam gossip that the others were very, very large. V'aslam kisim kadeshul yisra the dam, and they made kisim over there so that the others do not get scratched. So you see in these types of cases that it's a shmira for the animal. So continuing on, we're mentioning this type of an Indian. There was a Maisa with a person whose wife, Rahman Aslan, was nifter, and they had a young baby, and it had to be nursed, and the wife was no longer here. And he was very poor, and he didn't have the money to pay for a nursemaid. And he had a nace, and it was developed in him dadim like those of a woman, and he was able to nurse his child. Look how great this person is, that he had this tremendous miracle. Just the opposite. And look how, on the other side of it, yes, he certainly must have had, as I'm forced to speak out, he must have had great zchuyos. Sabai is not disputing that. But there is an aspect of it which is the griusa, in that he could not be sustained in the normal way, in the derech hateva, in the normal way, and what was required. So the shar of the Shari Parnasa were blocked for him, and he had to come on to this great miracle. So there is, in a certain way, there's a griyusa with this. Look how difficult it is, Parnos, how difficult that they had to change the whole Seder Bereshis for this person and have them develop Dodim like an Isha. And Teda, that it's so, that how difficult, how schwer it is, because there are nisim and minashamayim for several different things, for refuas, etc., different things that are nisim, but we don't see that the food is created. We don't see that there's a creation, that there's a nace, that food is created out of nowhere, out of nothing, that food is created. Ton Rabbanan, in a similar vein, Ton Rabbanan Maisa Ba'adamecha Shanasi Isha Gidemes, and a person who married a woman who was Gidemes, and she was missing a limb. Rashi says her hand was severed. And he didn't recognize that until the day of Misa. He wasn't aware of that. Until she died, he wasn't aware that she was missing this hand. He had such sneas, they were so tzanua that he didn't even realize that. Omarav, or some is Rebbe, Boyre Kamatznu Ishazu. Look how the great sneas of this woman, that her husband didn't even know that she was missing this limb. No, that's not, the great mile is not for the woman. Zudarka bakach. This is her derech. This is the darka bakach that it's to conceal, to be tznuah, number one, and number two is to conceal a mum like this, that she was missing the hand. The great mile over here is how the tznius of the man, that he was so tznuah that he didn't even recognize in his wife and he was not mistaken and didn't even recognize that she was missing this hand. Zacharim Yitzim Levuvim. So the Mishnah said that Zacharim, the males, are permitted to go out Levuvim. My Levuvim, what does that mean? Omer Avuna Tusri. It means that they can go out in pairs. They go out together, they go tied in pairs. This is, as Rashi says, that you tie them together so that they don't run away. My mashal levuvim lishon bekruvihu. So levuvim, we're saying, means that they're close together. They go out in pairs. Where do we see in the pasuk that levuvim is a lotion of coming close? Tersiv levavtini achvesi kala. So I've become close to you. You captured my heart. I've come close to you. So you see, it's a lotion of closeness. Ula Amar, he says a different pshat. Ula Amar or shekashim lam keneged libam. They used to tie a leather protector against their heart, a piece of leather to protect their heart, because the wolves would attack, and they would attack on the chest or the stomach, so they would have a protective piece of leather to protect them against the Ze'evim. So, the Gemara, the Ze'evim HaZacharim Nafli Nekevus Le Nafli, if they only attack Zacharim and not Nekevus, Bishlama, according to the previous Pshat, there was in pairs. So the Zacharim, their nature would be to wander off more, to run away. That's why they had to tie them in pairs. Nekevus didn't have that nature to run away. It was not necessary. But if you're telling me that it's the protective covering, so why is it dafka for the males and not for the females? The wolves would attack. They would attack l'cher both. More answers, Mishum the Masechet Indra. Because the males, the Zacharim, they go at the head of the flock, and that's where the Zevim would attack. In fact, the Gemara Zevim Bereish Idra, Nafla B'Sayf Idra, Lein Nafla, they only attack the front of the flock, not the back. So why Dafka for the Zacharim? Ella Mishum Deshamni. No, another pshat is, alternatively, more wants to say because they're fat, and that's why they attack the Zacharim. In fact, the more of the Nekevas, like a Shamni, there's no fat ones from the Nekevas. V'su miyode ben hani lahani. Do they know the difference from one or the other? Meaning, as the Rishonim say, if they attack, let's say, the back of the flock, where the Nekevas are, do they know that they're fatter ones at the front, that they will not attack at the back? They don't know. That's how they see it, and they will attack. So if it's a protection, then the Nekevas would need it as well. El the Gemara says, the reason, the distinction between the males and the females are that the males, they walk with their heads up, their nose up, their heads up, and they turn from side to side. So as Rashi explained, it looks like they want to attack. So they agitate the Zevim, and the Zevim attack them. The women, the females rather, don't walk in that manner, and therefore they don't instigate the Zevim, so they attack the males and not the Nekevas, and that's why the Zacharim need this extra protection. Rav Nachman by Yitzchak Amar, he says a different pshat. He says, or shekoshim lahem tachas zachrusan. He says that it's the leather that they tied underneath the aver of the zachrus, kedei shelo yalo ala nekevas. They wanted to prevent them from mating with the nekevas, as some of the Rishonim speak out in cases where the nekevas have to nurse the young ones. They don't want them to become pregnant, so they attach this or tachzachrusan so they will not mate with the nekevas. Mimai Midiktani, where do we see that it's talking in that context? Mimai Midiktani Seifa Varachel Yoitzish Chuzais. It says that the Rechelim go out Chuzais. My Chuzais. That means She'ochsim Al Yelsham Lamal Kedei She'alem Zacharim. So that context, it means that they tie the tail up to expose the Malkam HaErva so that the Zacharim will mate with them. So it's talking in the context of mating, so Reisha Kedei Shelo Yalu Nekevas. So the Reisha is Shelo Yalu Al Nekevas. So Taisus explains that we're talking by the Zacharim that they tie the or that they should not mate. Now we said that the Loshen Az of Levuvin is in closeness. Now here it's the opposite. So Taisus says we find that sometimes they use a Loshen of where it means, let's say in this context, closeness. It doesn't mean that they should come close. It means closeness to avoid the closeness, to avoid the mating. So Al Kopanim, we see that the Sefer is talking in the context of mating. The Reisha is also in that context. So therefore we say Reisha Kadesh Lo Yalo Nekeva Sefer Kadesh Yalo Lem Zechorim. My mashma the haish chuzois lishna de gluyahu. So it says the Sefer is saying that Rachel yoisish chuzos, which means that they tied the tail and exposed the makama erva so that they should mate. Where do we see that this is a lashon of chuzos, lashon of reveal? The chsivnei isha likrosoi. She is a zaina. So it says exposed as a zaina, the nitzura slave, and her heart is surrounded with machshavas of znus. So you see that it's exposed, that it's a lashon of being exposed here also. That is the context we're talking, that it's in the context of mating, and that's why they tie the tails.